They tried to quench the fire, drown it all in chains, tried to break our will and wash away our names. But every spark they buried only fed the flame. Now the cry of freedom's roaring through the rain. Hear the cry of freedom on the winds of change. Every voice united, breaking every chain. We were born to stand and never bow again. Let the fire of liberty forever reign. Forever reign. Now the walls are shaking from the battle cry. Truth is rising to the sky. Every soul that ever felt the weight of chains feels the fire of freedom in their veins. No more chains, no more lies. Hear the thunder as we rise. Freedom's call won't be denied. Now the fire burns worldwide. Hear the cry of freedom on the winds of change. Every voice united, breaking every chain. We were born to stand and never bow again. Let the fire of liberty forever reign. Let the fire of liberty forever reign.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLR.
Come gather round the footlights, lads, and hear the old boards groan. A tale of ink and iron will, of voices overblown. From mics and scripts to painted sails, we've traded shore for sea. The players will man the rigging soon. Aye, all hands, follow me. From Long John shadowed silver grin to Jim with compass true. We speak the words, we wear the scars, we make the old world new. No gold without the work behind, no legend without We just ship a single breath. The course is not set yet. We players sail, we players sail, we players sail soon. All hands.
Podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody?
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
From red dirt roads to the Capitol steps, Rick's calling truth, no time for regrets. Fire in his voice, facts in his hand, talking sense to the heart of this land. It's the Rick Robinson Show, where the truth rides high. No spin, no script, just an eagle in the sky. From D.C. to Tulsa, he's calling it out. Mic in his hand, yeah, he's got the clout. Heartland Radio, raw and real. Tune in, speak up, and feel what we feel. He's breaking down the noise, cutting through the lies, shining light where the shadow hides. With guests in the mix and callers on cue, he's a voice for the many, not the few. Well, grab your coffee, raise that flag, stand your ground, never wave that rag. News with a backbone, voice of the free. Rick's got the pulse of liberty. It's the Rick Robinson Show, bold, unafraid. Truth bombs drop in a red state parade. From the plains to the power, he's speaking it loud. With a mic and a mission that makes us proud. Talk for the people, talk that's real. The Rick Robinson Show, where we say what we feel.
And welcome in to the Wednesday edition, otherwise known as Chat Lives Matter Day edition, otherwise known as the Hump Day edition of the Rick Robinson Show. I'm sorry I missed you guys on Monday, and I really did legitimately miss you guys on Monday. But I spent all day out in the wild and was suffering from allergies from Hades. Anyway, so we're here, we're live, it's Wednesday, and there's a lot to unpack because conservative and liberal splody heads are all over social media talking about what a raw deal this Iran thing was. And the funniest thing is, I don't think half of them understand what's actually happening right now. One of the most vocal critics I've seen of Trump lately, especially with this Iran thing, has been Mark Levin. And so we're going to start there. in just a minute. But first, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to come in and hang out. I see Denny and Raptor already in the chat. Wherever you are watching us from, our chats are open. Feel free to say hi. Unless you're a retarded lib idiot, then you're probably going to get to boot. But you can still come say hi anyway. For a minute, and then see if we can get along or not. Because, yeah, look, I am First Amendment. I really am. But coming into my chats is a lot like coming into my living room, and I don't let assholes in my house. So if you're going to be a dick, then you're going to go away. Pretty much that simple. Fair warning. All right, so let's see. Hang on. It'll take me a second to find it again because I decided to do something a little different. Hang on. Because I saw all this today, and I'm like, you guys really don't think Trump is this retarded, do you? These are the so look on the left. I get it; they really do think he's this dumb, but I'm starting to think some of the people on the right are just as retarded as some of the people on the left, because I don't understand why they are taking all of this at face value. And I'll let you know what this is in just a moment as soon as I get it squared away here. So hang on, and I think it's that one. I think no, where'd it go? Where did it go? Because that's not that it. Where did it go? Oh, I think I hit the wrong button. My bad. One moment, please. Haha. Live radio. What are you going to do? Sometimes it works. Sometimes you hit the wrong button and it makes everything go nuts. I was like, why is the screen blank? It's not supposed to be blank. All right, so let's start here. Because this is what a lot of folks are freaking out about today, including none other than Mark Levin himself. But here we go.
That includes 10
hang on, is it going to play? Oh, wait, I know why it's not playing. That's my fault.
separate points. Some of them include the U.S. guaranteeing a non-aggression pact with Iran, continuing Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz, acceptance that Iran can enrich uranium for its nuclear program, removal of all primary sanctions on Iran, removal of secondary sanctions, an end of all UN Security Council resolutions against Iran, an end to the IAEA's resolutions on Iran's nuclear program, compensation payment for Iran and its war damage, withdrawal of U.S. forces from the region, and a ceasefire on all fronts. Those are a number of points that are not going to be reached, and the next 2 weeks are going to be critical as negotiators try to hammer this out. That includes 10 separate points. Some of them.
All right, so there you have what Iran is putting out publicly is their 10-point peace plan. But I don't really understand why so many people on our side at this point seem to not only be siding with Iran, but pushing Iranian propaganda, because that's all this is. Iran is trying to save face with the rest of its region, because it has been the controlling factor in this region now for 40 some odd years, 47 years. And here's the thing that nobody seems to be talking about, because while Donald Trump is saying that, hey, we're willing to come to the table, this is also what Donald Trump is doing. A lot of people, because they don't pay attention to True Social, and I know sometimes that his True Social post stuff gets pushed over to X and everywhere else, but for some reason, a lot of folks don't pay attention to it. I'm going to put this on the screen. You're not really going to be able to read it, but I'm going to put it on the screen so you guys can see that I'm actually pulling it from a source and read it to you. But this was put out on his True Social account earlier today. This came out at 6:30 my time in the morning. So a country, basically any country, supplying military weapons to Iran will be immediately tariffed on any and all goods sold to the United States of America at 50%, effective immediately. There will be no exceptions or exemptions, President DJT. So in one fell swoop, he just priced China out of Iran's resupply business, because they do much more business with us than they do with Iran. And he just made it a lot harder for them to be able to do what Iran hoped they were going to be able to do with this next 2 weeks. And that's only step one. So here's the next step that nobody's really talking about, as I get it pulled up on the screen. So hang on just a second, because he fired two volleys off today on True Social. That was the first one. Give me just a moment and I will show you the next one. And then I'm going to explain exactly what happens here, because a lot of people don't seem to understand exactly what's going on. So this is his other post that was fired off around the same time. And again, I'm going to put it on the screen You're not going to be able to read it, so I'm going to read it for you, but that way you can see that I am actually pulling this from a source. This was put out 4 hours ago. The United States will work closely with Iran, which we have determined has gone through what will be a very productive regime change. So let me explain to you what's happening here. So everybody's freaking out because, of course, within minutes of the ceasefire, the IRGC was firing off rockets into Saudi Arabia and everywhere else. But here's the thing that nobody seems to want to understand or have explained to them is right now Iran is completely fractured. The politicians want the peace deal because they can feel their regime slipping away. The IRGC wants to fight until they die because that's what they want. They want the caliphate. That's their job. Their job is to fill the world with blood so that they can bring about the caliphate and bring about the return of their, I think they call him the 12th Imam or something. I don't remember. But here's what Donald Trump is doing. He's basically telling the politicians, hey, get your house in order or we're going to have to do it for you. That's basically what this says. So I'm going to finish reading it here. There's a lot in this one, but I'm going to go ahead and read through all of it because it's not like we don't have the time anyway. So again, the United States will work closely with Iran, which we have determined has gone through what will be a very productive regime change. That's him shot calling. That's him telling the politicians in Iran, hey, if you want to keep what little power you have left, you need to get rid of the hardliners and start working with us. There will be no enrichment of uranium, which counters one of the points that Iran put out in his 10-point plan already. And the United States will, working with Iran, dig up and remove all of the deeply buried nuclear dust that was bombed into the dirt with B-2s. I've changed that around a little bit because the sentence structure there seemed a little sloppy to me. It is now and has been under very exacting satellite surveillance, thanks to our Space Force. Nothing has been touched from the date of attack. We are and will be taking tariff and sanctions relief, or talking tariff and sanctions relief with Iran. Many of the 15 points that we've set out have already been agreed to. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Now look, nobody in the administration, and I mean nobody in the administration, believes that Iran is going to hold this peace deal. But here's the other thing. Here's the other thing that nobody's, and I don't know why nobody on our side is talking about this. This is the stuff that pisses me off because everybody's just, as soon as Trump says or does one little thing, oh my God, see, we told you he was terrible. We told you, and I get it. In 2016, I was just as bad. So I'm really not trying to throw stones from a glass house. But if somebody as stubborn as me can come to my senses, so can the rest of you idiots. Because in 2016, I was where you are. As soon as he said it was, ooh, red flag, red flag, red flag, and I was freaking out. And I've told you guys this. But I've also been watching him now work, or as we now say, cook, for the last 10 years. Let the man cook. Because here's the other thing. If/when Iran breaks this ceasefire deal, and you know they're going to, because they already are, just they haven't taken any direct action with us. We're the only ones that have sued for peace. They answered. So that's why right now the peace deal is holding with us, even if they're being dumb with everybody else. And I still think Trump is playing this on a couple of different levels because don't forget, we still have several more assets moving into the region that aren't set up yet. And the other thing that nobody's talking about, since we declared Operation Epic, whatever the hell this thing is, hell, I don't know. I don't remember what they call it. I'm a little flustered today because I'm taking flack on both sides today. I don't like being the guy that's taking flack on both sides, but I'm willing to do it when I'm pretty sure I'm right. But here's the thing that nobody else is talking about. Since we declared this Operation Epic Fury, there we go. I knew it was in here somewhere. Once we declared Operation Epic Fury was over, guess what? When Iran breaks the ceasefire. Thanks, Angela. Yeah, you're right. It came to me right after I said I couldn't remember. But I appreciate that. Thank you. But yeah, so look, since this one is now over and we've declared it over, if and when they break the ceasefire deal, because we know they're going to, guess who gets a fresh set of downs? Guess who gets a new full 60-day clock before Congress can do anything other than bitch, moan, whine, and complain? And here's the other really annoying thing about what's happening. Because all of Monday and Tuesday, oh my God, Trump's gonna drag us into nuclear war and we're all gonna glow in the dark, and he's talking about destroying an entire civilization, blah, 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 blah. And then he didn't. And then it's Trump caved. He didn't cave. He's doing what he always does. The guy is willing to talk to anyone if they're willing to talk to him. And he is trying to work directly with the remaining few politicians that actually exist in Iran to wrest control of the, 40 different subsects of IRGC commanders that still exist? Which is why rockets are still flying everywhere, even though the politicians are signing a peace deal. Because they're not actually the ones in control of their military. And guess what? The reason Khomeini Jr. or whatever the hell his name is still the figurehead is because the IRGC installed him. This dude is either dead, nearly dead, or in a coma. Nobody really knows for sure. But all of this is frustrating because people on even our side of the argument are having kittens over Donald Trump not, I repeat, not bombing Iran back to the Stone Age because they're the ones who gave him an off-ramp. Now they're posturing and they're doing everything that they always do to posture to make it seem as if they're the ones that are winning when they're not. And here's the thing. We have gone from, oh my God, he's going to completely exterminate the Persian civilization to, oh my God, he backed down and now he's not hitting them hard enough in 24 hours. So which one is it? Can we pick a lane and stay in it? Because I would really like for us to pick a lane and stay in it. I don't know if we're ever going to be able to do that again, but I would really like for us to pick a lane and stay in it. Because you can't have it both ways. Now, well, I thought I had this segregated better, or segmented better, but I don't. So we may or may not play some of the press briefing here in a minute. I haven't decided from earlier today. You know, I think we will. Hang on. Let me get it queued up here. So he's coming to the podium now. So hang on. We're not going to play all of it, but I do want to play some of it.
Iran has been a threat to the United States and the free world for 47 years. Chants of death to America, targeting our people, killing Americans, lying and blackmailing their way toward a nuclear weapon, so they thought. No longer. Not on our watch. Other presidents marked time and kicked the can down the road. President Trump made history. From the strike that took out Qasem Soleimani, to tearing up the disastrous Obama-Iran deal, to the precision campaign that obliterated Iran's nuclear sites in Operation Midnight Hammer, to the decisive military victory we just achieved in Operation Epic Fury. No other president has shown the courage and resolve of this commander-in-chief. President Trump forged this moment. Iran begged for this ceasefire, and we all know it. As the President truth this morning, a big day for world peace. Iran wants it to happen. They've had enough. Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory on the battlefield. A capital V military victory. By any measure, Epic Fury decimated Iran's military and rendered it combat ineffective for years to come. You see, in less than 40 days, one of our combatant commands, Central Command, CENTCOM, using less than 10% of America's total combat power, dismantled one of the world's largest militaries. The world's leading state sponsor of terrorism proved utterly incapable of defending itself, its people, or its territory. We untied just a fraction of our strength, and Iran suffered a devastating military defeat. Together with our Israeli partners, America's military achieved every single objective on plan, on schedule, exactly as laid out from day one. Iran's Navy is at the bottom of the sea, whether it's the Soleimani class, their frigate class, their prized drone aircraft carriers, submarines, mine layers, sunk. Iran's Air Force has been wiped out. Iran no longer has an air defense, any sort of a comprehensive air defense system. We own their skies.
All right, so we're going to stop right there for a second because I know what some of you are about to say over there. But Rick, they just shot down one of our F-15s. Yeah, they shot down an F-15 with a shoulder-launched missile. It is almost impossible to take out every aspect of an air defense. But when you think about the scale of the rescue that we just pulled off over Easter weekend, the hundreds of assets that were flying all over Iran, basically blanketing their skies looking for this pilot, the subterfuge that went into rescuing the pilot because the CIA put out a false set of information about the fact that he'd already escaped the country and was well on his way home, even though he was sitting on an Iranian mountaintop somewhere. The scale that the American military has been able to pull off has been astounding to me in a lot of ways because we haven't seen a military slated with its actual objective in a long time. Our military was always charged with one thing: to kill people and break things when called upon to make sure that peace reigned. That is what our military has done here in ways that some of us still can't even fathom. Yes, I weep for every loss of life. I weep for every person who was wounded, which I think right now we're talking about around 313 people total. But in 39 some odd days in of conflict, you're talking about less than 400 people dead or injured. The people that fought in World War II, the people that fought in Korea, the people that fought in Vietnam would have been salivating over the dominance that we have pulled off. And the fact that he is basically just putting it out for everybody to hear and to see should be astounding to everyone because he goes into a lot more detail here about how little of our military strength we've actually used. And I think it's right about here, I think.
Their missile program is functionally destroyed. Launchers, production facilities, and existing stockpiles depleted and decimated. And almost completely ineffective. Iran shot hundreds and hundreds of missiles and one-way attack drones at our aircraft carrier. They were obsessed with it, and they never got even close. Every single one of those shots easily shot down miles and miles away from the Abe Lincoln. They were blowing ammo into Fantasyland. Contrast that with, most significantly, in last night's wave of more than 800 strikes, we finished completely destroying Iran's defense industrial base, a core pillar of our mission objective. What little they have left buried in bunkers is all they will have. They can still shoot, we know that. Their command and control is so decimated they can't really talk and coordinate, so they still may shoot here and there, but that would be very, very unwise. But they can no longer build missiles, build rockets, build launchers, or build UAVs. Their factories have been razed to the ground, set back in historic fashion. You see, had Iran refused our terms, the next targets would have been their power plants, their bridges, and oil and energy infrastructure. Targets they could not defend and could not realistically rebuild. It would have taken them decades, and we were locked and loaded. They couldn't defend against it.
And the truth is, we still are. And I must have missed the part, it may have been in part that I'd already played, but he talked about the fact that we had used about 10% of our military to deal with this. Now, if you've seen the maps and you've seen the number of assets everywhere, then that should be astounding to you to think about the fact that with everything that we have in that region right now, that is about 10% of our military capability. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was a clear shot across the bow to China, because let's not forget, Trump is still slated to meet with Xi Jinping here in a few weeks. And that's what a lot of this was about, because Russia and China have still been saber-rattling. We have just shown our enemies, that we can go anywhere we want to go. And pardon my language, if you have kids near the screen or paying attention, earmuffs in 3, 2, 1, and we can knock their dick in the dirt anytime we choose. Because that's what we did. Everybody has talked about Iran as if it was some untouchable behemoth of a monster, and we leveled their military capability in less than 2 months. Leveled it to the point where they have no clear command and control structure anymore. Now we have the military trying to oust the rest of the political class fighting for its life, and everybody's like, oh my God, Trump caved. Trump did not cave. Trump is doing exactly what he said he was going to do. He softened the hell out of the region. He's giving them a chance to come to the table and fight for their ability to still exist, should they decide to do so. And I would be willing to guarantee you there are probably quite a few spycraft folks in the region starting to line up weapon access to Iranian citizens just in case. Just in case. Anyway, we've hit the point where we do need to take a break. We've got a new. This is new. If you've missed the beginning of the program, you haven't heard it yet. This one isn't out yet. It hasn't made it out to our syndication platform for our music yet. But this is one of our newest ones from the KLR Radio House Band. We're gonna go to break with it. My name is Rick Robinson. It is Wednesday, so for those of you working for the weekend, you are halfway there. It is halfway through lunchtime on the East Coast. Nearly lunchtime in God's time zone. I don't even know why I'm talking to you folks on the left coast, because you're probably still asleep anyway. Anyway, we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
They tried to quench the fire, drown it all in chains, tried to break our will and wash away our names. But every spark they buried only fed the flame. Now the cry of freedom's roaring through the rain. Hear the cry of freedom on the winds of change. Every voice united
program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
And welcome back into the program, ladies and gentlemen. So we're dissecting the Iran ceasefire, taking a deeper dive, looking into it, because a lot of folks just seem like they want to be mad. And I have to admit, Angela in the chat made a great point earlier. He needs to finish this or it's all for naught. But I think he's looking for perhaps a different way to finish it, like potentially finding a way to try to work with the incoming regime, much like he did in Venezuela, which also pissed a lot of people off, by the way, because they wanted him to immediately install the president that they feel actually won the election, and he didn't. But he is moving that way slowly. And that's the thing. Donald Trump is trying to do everything he can to not destabilize the entire region, because he understands how important Iran has been to that entire place. Whether anybody wants to admit it or not, Iran has been the one kind of calling the shots and sheepdogging everybody else around there, because they are the ones that have had all of the military might and muscle in the region, save Israel. And that's changed, which is why Iran is desperate. Iran is wanting it to look as if Donald Trump was the one on his knees begging for this deal, when in reality it was their politicians doing it. Because they know that everybody else in the world can see and smell the blood in the water. And they know what happens in that region when you start to see and smell blood in the water. If you don't believe me, just look at some of the harder stances folks like the UAE have taken when they started seeing Iran just getting pounded by us. Suing for peace isn't enough. This regime needs to go away. That's from them. You know what, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say it again. If the people in that region want that regime to go away, that is the responsibility of the people in that region, not America. That's part of the problem. Nobody wants to talk about how far back this actually goes. This has been going on for much longer than 47 years. This was started way back in the 50s. This was only a few years after we dealt with Germany, and then Iran elected a socialist prime minister, and America was having none of that. Britain was having none of that because they wanted to nationalize what eventually became British Petroleum in the region, and they were not having any of that. So we started doing our little, George Soros, before George Soros turned all his guns on us, started going in and trying to destabilize the region and oust the prime minister, and the Shah got installed, and this happened and that happened, and then there was a revolution, and then the next thing you know, in 1979, we're watching the entire region fall back to 700 BC. Hell, I'll even give you 700 AD, but probably closer to 700 BC if we're being honest. But nobody wants to talk about that. This is why, from everybody who's been screaming and yelling that this isn't our war, we don't need to be doing this. And look, I am the first one to tell you Team America World Police was a terrible idea. Funny as hell movie. Terrible idea in real life. However, this was our mess. We made it. We were, like I said, we came out of World War II. We were just dealing with a huge Nazi socialist thing out of Germany. So as soon as Iran started, flirting with socialism, we were like, we're not doing this again. Nope. So we're gonna go in and we're in the words of Barney Fife, we're gonna nip it in the bud, and it didn't work. And we've been paying for it ever since. And I'm gonna say this again. This is something that should have been dealt with in, if nothing else, 1981. Like, from the second Reagan got sworn in, this should have been a thing that was dealt with, and it wasn't, because Iran gave our hostages back, and we counted that as enough of a win. I was little, so I didn't get a say then. I do now. The Islamist caliphate folks need to be run out of that region on a rail. Period. Full stop. End of sentence. That is how this ends. That is how this goes away, and that's how it goes away for forever. However, if you have read the same book that I've read, you know how the last chapter goes, so we know it's never gonna get quite that far, because it can't. For everything that happens at the end of the book to happen, these crazy people still need to exist in some form or fashion. So I don't know how long this is going to work. I don't know how well it puts us in a good foothold or how long that's going to last. But I can tell you that despite what the left wants you to think, and despite what half the people that are talking heads want you to think, the world is not viewing Donald Trump or the United States of America as a laughingstock. They might be a little terrified right now, but they're not viewing us as a laughingstock. They viewed us as a laughingstock under the last guy, when they watched prime minister after prime minister having to lead the dude around by the elbow to get him back to where he was supposed to be. But they didn't want you to, that was made up. That was poor camera angles. Those were deep fakes. Those things didn't actually happen. But now we have somebody who is basically reshaping the world stage and making them notice us again and telling them that we are done being the world's bitch, because like it or not, and it was our policies that made us this way, we decided after World War II that we were going to have to be the world's bitch because we survived World War II better than anybody else did. We were on a more secure footing, so we were able to go in and start funding the rebuilds and reshaping everything, and everyone took advantage of it. Everybody in the UN, everybody in NATO, they all took advantage of our generosity. And I don't know about you, but I'm done with that. I'm done with that. Especially some of the stuff we haven't even talked about that I'll get into in hour 2 probably is how much of our tax money we are finding has been wasted. And wasted and wasted and wasted. And the fact that out of 100% of the countries on this planet, 95% of them get our money. You and I don't get a say in that. We're supposed to when we vote. That's how this is supposed to work. We vote for the people that do the things that we send them to DC to do. And then most of the time they don't do them. And then they make their own backroom deals. This is why Congress is broken. This is why our government is broken. About the only person who is seriously trying to fight for you and I to have a voice is the guy that everybody hates. And I say everybody for a reason, because the establishment, regardless of the letter behind their name, hates this man because he's trying to give you control again, and they don't want that. Not only do they not want it, they can't have that. Because if you start getting control again, you're going to start seeing exactly how broken everything is. And that's exactly what's happening right now. We have, in Minnesota, there are hundreds of empty daycare centers. In California, there are hundreds of hospice care facilities housed in a single-story house with the same address, raking in government money. We're now finding out that there are Somali leering centers in Ohio in nearly the same number that there are in Minneapolis. And it's your money and my money that's paying for that. But nobody wants to talk about that part. Because if we start complaining about where all they're using our money, they start making us seem like we're racist. You know what? I don't care anymore. You can call me whatever names you want to call me. I am still going to look for the truth. And enough is enough. Because while we're fighting amongst ourselves, the left is absolutely positively losing their mind. As a matter of fact, they are pushing even further to the left, and it seems like this is by design. I'm going to play something here in just a minute. So a lot of you older folks like me probably don't know who this guy is. I had to do some research. But this is a left-leaning podcaster who, as far as the left is concerned, is basically the left's answer to Joe Rogan. And he's suddenly doing a lot of endorsements ever since what happened with Mamdani in New York City. But here he is. This is Just about 46 seconds of him because I don't want to make anybody stab their ears with a pencil.
I'm a part of the Janet Mills militia, and therefore, this kind of stuff doesn't matter to me, okay? I've already made my most ethical voting decision in Maine. I understand that people can change, but he has not earned the benefit of the doubt. He hasn't properly renounced his service. He hasn't condemned Blackwater. He is Nazi Inc. He needs to show us that he's changed. You don't give people a chance like this as their first, second chance. You don't put them in positions of sweeping political power because there's a chance he's changed. I mean, that's why I feel like a lot of people don't have any argument to when I say, yeah, that's why I'm a Mills Mafia. This is precisely the reason why I am riding with Janet Mills, who has a track record that is clear. If those are the two options on the Democrat front, you know, if we're gonna be serious about it, then what do? Janet Mills all the way. We're all Mills.
All right, so for those of you who don't know what that is, that's Hassan Piker. And he is a very severely left-leaning liberal podcaster who has said such things as America deserved what happened in 9/11. He doesn't care that Jews were raped on October 7th. He thinks that Palestine not only has a right to exist, but the right to wipe Israel off the map. And those are the people that the left pardon me, is now running to in droves. And here's just a little bit of the article that I pulled this clip from. This is, of course, from Amy Curtis, one of our contributors on Weekend News Roundup, who writes for Town Hall, who works for the same parent company I do, because I write for Twitchy. She writes for Town Hall. We all work for Salem. Except she's salary, I'm contract. Anyway, so she's cooler than me, even though we both started in the same place. Anyway, so here is a bit of the article. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I will put it out on my profile here in a little bit for those of you that want to read it. I usually only share this stuff to X. For those of you hanging out on Facebook or YouTube, you can go find me on X at RowdyRick73. So, and I quote from her article, "It seems radical anti-Semitic leftist Hassan Piker is the Democratic Party's new spokesman. He's campaigned with Michigan Senate candidate Abdul El-Said, who was another one who is, I'm just looking at it going, really, that's the best Michigan can do. Al, help me, brother. You live there. Can you start working on fixing this stuff? I'm just saying. So the candidate himself has refused to condemn any of the hateful things Piker has said about Americans, Israelis, capitalism, and even Vietnamese refugees. Now, Piker has made an endorsement in Maine's Democratic Senate primary race too, and you'll be shocked, I tell you, to learn the notorious anti-Semite didn't endorse the guy with the Nazi tattoo. Instead, Piker's throwing his weight behind Governor Janet Mills and her campaign to unseat Republican Susan Collins, and we played that clip earlier. So, and I quote, "I'm a part of the Janet Mills militia. I've already made my most ethical voting decision, and I'm not changing my mind." Yeah. Wow. So for those of you who don't know, so there was some confusion when this clip started being shared out by Town Hall. And somebody posted, "Didn't he just come back from China?" No, it was actually just in Cuba, though, so not that much of a difference. And he was happily wearing a $700 shirt while looking at all the people communism drove into poverty. Because the communists in America don't seem to understand how communism actually works in the rest of the world. And when you point out historically how communism has destroyed everything it's ever touched, but Rick, that wasn't true communism. True communism has never been tried. Anybody want to talk about one of the first pilgrim colonies settled here in America that tried communism and failed? Which is one of the funny things, because on paper, communism sounds like a really great idea. And a lot of people think it would be great on a smaller scale. But even that colony proved otherwise. Because eventually, everybody else gets pissed off that they're the only ones doing the work. And eventually, less and less people do the work. And then nothing gets done. Now, here's the thing. The Democrats have learned nothing. if this is what they're running towards. Because the folks in Virginia, they have some very serious buyer's remorse. As a matter of fact, what are we, 3 months into her term at this point? And she already has a 46% negative approval rating in 3 months. Her being, I know her name is actually pronounced Spanberger. I pronounce it Spamberger because, you know, she was fake to begin with. So it seemed like it fit to me. But yeah, she ran as a centrist, as a classical liberal, not a socialist progressive. And now she's governing as a socialist progressive. And most of Virginia is finally waking up and going, we got hoodwinked. So for those of you in Michigan, I hope you're paying attention. For those of you in Maine, I hope you're paying attention. Because I, for one, am really starting to live by the axiom that people need to start getting what they vote for. So they have to start cleaning up their own messes. And Virginia and New York City are in a hell of a state of mess right now. And it's because not enough people on my side chose to go out and vote because they didn't think it mattered. This is what happens when you don't vote. Plain and simple. And if you don't vote, you have nobody to blame but yourself when things don't go the way that you want. Now, if progressivism and socialism and communism is the way this country wants to go, then by all means, all of you go out and push the boulder up that particular hill, and let's see what happens when it starts rolling backwards. But I don't think there are a lot of you that even understand how socialism works or what it's going to do to you. Because here's the thing. You guys think that socialism is this great equalizer and the rich come down here and you come up here and eventually everybody's the same. Except that's not what happens. What happens is there's folks that are at the top with capitalism. There's folks that are at the top with communism. And guess what? Most of that doesn't actually change. There's a little bit of a swap. But a lot of the people that have the power keep the power. If you don't believe me, just look at what's happening in Iran today. Look at what happened in Venezuela. We snatched a dude in his Snuggie out of his bed, and his vice president's now running the country. Now, you can be mad about that. You can be upset about that. You can say whatever you want. Now, in Venezuela specifically, our government is pushing towards the point where the person who's currently running the country does wind up having a free and fair election, and hopefully Venezuela gets to pick who they want to lead them next. I think that's the same thing Trump is wanting to try to do in Iran. Is it going to work? I don't know. But you know what is important to me, and I said this earlier in the program, what is important to me is now, if and when Iran breaks this peace deal, because you know they're going to, they're already trying, they're just not going after us because they're the only ones that they've signed, we're the only ones they've signed the deal with. And so what happens is, if and when they break it, because they're going to, and everybody knows they're going to, but if and when they break it, Trump gets a fresh set of downs. Which means the 60-day clock starts all over again, which is gonna piss the left off even more. But the funniest thing about the left is the fact that in 24 hours, we went from, oh my God, the dictator's gonna destroy an entire civilization to, oh my God, taco. For those of you who don't know, TACO is their acronym for Trump always chickens out. But he didn't. He's playing the hand that he's dealt, and he's one of the best politicians that we have that does that. So I'm willing to let the man cook and see what happens. Now here, as we close out this hour here in about the next 6 minutes, here is Trump basically, going all over CNN for their take on his deal with Iran. So this is from Rapid Response 47. And this is quoting CNN. I'm going to put this on the screen. I think it may be there already. I think. Yep. All right. So again, you can't really read it, but I'm going to read it for you just so you can see where I'm pulling the information from. This is from CNN World. Iran claims victory, says it forced U.S. to accept 10-point plan. Anybody who believes this is retarded, but sure. Iran says it has achieved a great victory and forced the United States to accept its 10-point plan, according to a statement from Iran's Supreme National Security Council report by Iranian state media. As part of the plan, the U.S. has in principle agreed to lift all primary and secondary sanctions against Iran and to withdraw U.S. combat forces from all bases in the region, according to the council. So this is Rapid Response 47 responding to that. Attention at CNN, as at POTUS just said, Iran's official statement is linked in its truth below and posted by the Iranian foreign minister. This alleged statement by Iran is a fraud. Correct this immediately. And tagging CNN, CNN, Outfront CNN, Katie Collins, and everybody involved. And here is the commentary post from X reposting something that Truth on Truth Social. No one can believe that fake news CNN put out a knowingly false and dangerous statement, surprising absolutely no one, pretending it came from the upper levels of the Iranian government. It didn't. It was totally made up and posted as a headline for purposes of perhaps inflaming a very delicate situation. And he goes on to say more, but I'm not going to keep reading it, because that involves having to click show more, and it means that I have to move everything around, and it's a pain in the butt. But anyway, so look, I don't always agree with Trump. I do call balls and strikes as much as possible. But I don't see why everybody's freaking out about this, because just last night, everybody on the left was afraid that we were about to go nuclear on Iran. He finds a way not to do that, finds a way, if necessary, to get a fresh set of 60-day downs. And you saw what we did in less than 40. I think we're 42 days in, I think. I said 39 earlier, but I think it's 42. So in about the same amount of time it took God to flood the entire earth, we just basically bombed the Iranian regime back to the Stone Age while trying to leave the Iranian people alone so that they can have a taste of freedom again. So say what you want about that. I think we've done some amazing work there, and I'm willing to give the man the couple of weeks to see what he does with this and see whether Iran is smart enough to do something that ensures its own survival, as far as the government, not the people. But what can I say? All right, that's going to be the end of the hour. For those of you that are in the chat, make sure you are liking, sharing, subscribing, whatever options you have available, so that folks can see this. It helps us get past the dreaded algorithms, and I still think that was probably the best dad joke that Al Gore pulled on the entire planet, was claiming that he invented the internet all because they named the things that run it algorithms. Just saying. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
They tried to quench the fire, drown it all in chains, tried to break our will and wash away our names. But every spark they buried only fed the flame. Now the cry of freedom's roaring through the rain. Hear the cry of freedom on the winds of change. Every voice united, breaking every chain. We were born to stand and never bow again.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
The old board's grown. A tale of ink and iron will, of voices overblown. From mics and scripts to painted sails, we've traded shore for sea. The players will man the rigging soon. Aye, your hands, follow me. From Long John shadowed silver grin to Jim with compass true. We speak the words, we wear the scars, we make the old world new. No gold without the work behind, no legend without sweat. A stage, a ship, a single breath. The course is not set yet. We play a sail, we play a sail, we play a sail soon. All hands to KLRN.
Possible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
From red dirt roads to the Capitol steps, Rick's calling truth, no time for regrets. Fire in his voice, facts in his hand, talking sense to the heart of this land. It's the Rick Robinson Show, where the truth rides high. No spin, no script, just an eagle in the sky. From DC to Tulsa, he's calling it out. Mic in his hand, yeah, he's got the clout.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody?
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
Through the light, shining light where the shadow hides. With guests in the mix and callers on cue, he's a voice for the...
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back in for the Chat Lives Matter Day edition of the Rick Robinson Show. Don't forget, I'll be back tonight starting at 7 p.m. Eastern with the Wednesday night edition of Kingdom and Country Bible Study, followed by Toxic Masculinity, followed by the Edge of... Behind Enemy Lines, which I may or may not be doing a guest appearance on that one. I haven't confirmed yet. pardon me, Rick and Orty at 10 p.m. Eastern, followed by The Edge of Liberty tonight at 11 p.m. Eastern. And that'll be our closing act for the evening. And again, I want to thank you for everybody who takes the time to hang out with us. I know you can't really see it very well because a lot of you watch in spread out places, but we're averaging about anywhere between 30 to 40,000 plays a month. So for something that started on a shoestring budget, that's pretty damn good, in my opinion. And it is just my opinion. But then again, that's what I get paid to give. So anyway. All right. So speaking of paid, I didn't do a good job of this in hour 1. So we got to make up some time in hour 2. Let me tell you about our friends over at Freedom Chat. For those of you who don't know what that is, you guys remember the Signal chat thing that happened like, what, 2-3 weeks into the administration, and somehow a reporter got invited in and everybody was freaking out because dude like screen captured all kinds of stuff and was putting out sensitive information in an article, etc. Well, guess what? They use Signal for that, where Freedom Chat, that couldn't even happen. Freedom Chat is an app similar to Signal, but they take your data and your control of your data very, very seriously. So I do encourage you to check out our friends over at freedomchat.com. You have the option to go to their website and then pick whatever brand of phone you have and put the app on your phone. You can use it to communicate. It works a lot like WhatsApp and Signal and everything else. We also have channels there, one for the Rick Robinson Show and one for KLRM Radio. I am still working on getting other folks to build channels over there, but we're still trying to determine exactly how we're going to best make it something that you guys want to participate with, because it's a new piece of technology, and I'm old, so it takes me a while to learn things now. It pains me to say that, by the way, because I was like the tech guru for my entire family. Things were broken, I would be the one to come in and fix them. It's funny because my dad was always the mechanical one, I was the electronics one, and now I'm still trying to do that, but I'm old enough now that it takes a minute. It takes a minute to learn new things because I'm stubborn. But I do encourage you to check out our friends at Freedom Chat, and since I haven't done this in a while either, let me make it easy for you, for anybody who wants to check it out. Where are you? There we go. That's the one we're looking for. Right there. So that little QR code takes you right where you want to go to check everything out if you decide to. Oh, wow. That comes out all over. Why is it doing it twice? That's weird. Oh, I know why. Because I have 2 different YouTube channels open and 2 different versions. I was like, what is going on? I haven't done that since we've been able to do that. So anyway, so yeah, if you want to check it out, there's the QR code. Takes you straight to it. Feel free. And it is, as far as I know, mostly free to use. And I see somebody scanning it already, so thank you. All right, so since I haven't done this in a while either, we do have a merch store. So since it's Chat Lives Matter Day, you guys may have seen the picture circulating of the hunchback arguing with the camel over who said which line first. That is actually our version of the hat right there in our store. It's the Chat Lives Matter hat. Yeah, it's one of our biggest days that happened by accident here on KLRM Radio back when Sam Janney, otherwise known as Polita Bunny, who I work with over at Twitchy now, was doing a show with us, and she used to always give the chat heck and say, you know, chat's stupid, you guys suck, because it's just Sam, that's what she does. So we came up with this entire counteroffensive that chat was awesome, and that's where Chat Lives Matter came from. It was right around the time that the whole All Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter argument happened. I was like, you know what, we should try to capitalize on that. It didn't go quite as well as I thought, but it's been fun. Sorry, somebody just responded to something I put on X, and it almost made me completely like cackle on air. Anyway, I may or may not talk about it later if we have time. All right, so here's some of the other stuff that's been happening in the news. So Georgia Democrats were absolutely convinced that they were about to run away with a special election, but they didn't. So this happened in Georgia last night. There was a special election, and Clay Fuller, who was endorsed by Donald Trump to hopefully assume Marjorie Taylor Greene's District 14 seat in a runoff election, apparently did. So The Trump-endorsed candidate Clay Fuller has pulled off a win in the Georgia District 14 runoff election. Fuller will complete the congressional term of former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. As of last night, Decision Desk HQ projected that Clay Fuller wins the Georgia House 14 special election runoff, and this was made public and announced at 8:03 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time last night. So here's a bit of an excerpt. Georgia Republican Clay Fuller has defeated Democrat Sean Harris in a special U.S. House runoff election to replace former Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene, according to the Associated Press and NBC, which have both projected the same. With more than half of all the votes counted in the 14th congressional district race, the heavily favored Fuller, a former prosecutor, captured 55% to 45.8% for Harris, a retired Brigadier Army general, in the closely watched contest that has captivated the nation. Because the Democrats were convinced that they were going to run away with this one. As a matter of fact, even some folks that do what I do on the terrestrial side were talking about for the last couple of weeks how we need to get ready for the fact that we're probably about to lose a seat. And it didn't happen. Now, look, I'm not saying this should count as a bellwether for the midterms or anything else. And I'm going to say this again. If you don't go vote, the commies win. Because that's what we're fighting, ladies and gentlemen. Whether anybody wants to tell you this or not anymore, because it's not cool to say it anymore, it's not politically correct, people get pulled off of YouTube, people get their stuff canceled, I don't care. I built this from scratch. If I have to do it again, I will. I don't care. Because what we're fighting is the Islamo-fascist communist takeover of the West. We've been fighting it for forever. We were unwilling to admit it. Now we're having to face it. It was thrown in our face on September 11th. And for some reason, we still didn't get the memo. We've got it now. Maybe. So to go into this a little bit further, in the March 10th Georgia primary election, neither candidate surpassed 50% of the vote, resulting in the April 7th runoff election. Now that Fuller has been declared the winner, he will serve in District 14 through January of 2027. Fuller and Harris will be on the ballot again for a separate District 14 primary election on May 19th. This election will decide who will move to the November midterm election to vie for the full 2-year term. So, no, it's not over yet, but the Dems were already counting this as a flip, and it didn't happen. Because the Dems have been having a lot of solid luck with special elections so far this year. The problem is that now that we're getting closer to election season, people are actually starting to pay attention. So I don't think the Democrats' luck's going to hold out much longer, because people are really starting to figure out that they absolutely are as insane as they've shown you they are. All right, so anyway, let's see what other trouble we can get into real quick. Let's see, hang on. Oh, so this is already happening. So, basically with the announcement of the ceasefire, which again, may or may not hold. I guarantee you the Trump administration knows that it may or may not hold. But again, I also think one of the reasons they went ahead and took the off-ramp when it was presented to them is now, if they have to start things back up again, they get a fresh set of 60-day clock to do it all over again. So, in other words, they basically scored a first down, for those of you who want to use sports parlance. But the economic feedback from the ceasefire has already started to roll in. U.S. stocks surged Wednesday morning as oil plunged below $95 a barrel after President Trump said he had agreed to a 2-week ceasefire with Iran, paving the way to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The Dow Jones Industrial Average has soared a total of 1,048 points, or 2.3% of its total volume, as of 11:15 Eastern Time at the time of the writing of this particular article, with the S&P 500 and NASDAQ jumping 2.1 and 2.6% respectively. So this was updated as of 12:35. The Dow Jones is now up 1,174.5 points. The S&P 500 is up 152.8 points, and the NASDAQ is now up 705.3 points as of 12:35 Eastern Daylight Time. which again is a little less than 2 hours ago. So the energy markets are happy as well. We've already seen crude prices. They dropped a total of 13.1% to $94.96 a barrel. It's the lowest price in nearly a month after news that Iran would allow the temporary safe passage of ships through the strait, a vital maritime route for 20% of the world's oil supply. West Texas Intermediate crude also fell 3.9% to $72.22 a barrel. So don't expect this to show up instantaneously at the gas pumps, but this is actually good news on the oil price front following the announcement. So that's the catch, and there always is a catch. Gas and diesel prices always rise very quickly at the hint of a crisis, but they always drop back towards the mean much more slowly. And part of that, and this is the part that nobody talks about, is how supply and demand works. When the gas is purchased, they pay whatever the price is at the time, which means they need to mark it up to make a profit. So it's going to take time for the higher priced gas to move through the system before they can start purchasing at the lower price and pass the savings on to you. Now, I am also willing to admit there are some people that own businesses that are like, we can wait a couple of months before we bring this back down again and maybe pad our pockets a little bit more. Now, it's up to you whether you agree with that practice or not. As somebody who's owned a business, I can see both sides of it. As somebody who's currently running 3 businesses, I can see both sides of it. But yeah, so anyway. So the question remains, will the ceasefire hold? I don't think the administration expects it to. I think they're hoping that it might. I think they're hoping that the politicians in Iran are actually going to get their military lapdogs back under control and get them back on their leash and start hopefully moving towards more of a democratic system, much like is happening with Venezuela right now. Whether that plays out or not, I don't know. But again, the thing to keep in mind is we nearly wiped them off the map in 42 days. If they play the FAFO game again, we got another 60 days to do the same. So the question is, are they going to want to tempt the fates or not? The IRGC? Probably. The Iranian politicians? Probably not. All right, so as promised, we're going to get into some of the other news. And this is one of the things that I absolutely love about this current administration. Hang on, let me check something because I did want to join the press conference and I kind of forgot it was happening. So let me see if it ever started, because they're always late on those things anyway. So, nope, still says begin shortly, so I haven't forgotten. All right, so let me move back over to what I did want to talk about real quick. Now, I'm not going to play all of this because it's long, but this is Lee Zeldin basically laying some smackdown on the climate folks. Looking at you, Greta. Looking at you, Greta. I know. How dare you? I don't care. Anyway, here we go.
The front lines of advocating against there being an endangerment finding in 2009. You were there, even going back further, pushing back on predictions that you knew were not going to bear out, knowing that the only way that your arguments were going to be proven true is to wait decades in time. I am here with great admiration that you're willing to take on all of those arrows, knowing that predictions that you push back on won't be proven true until 2050 or 2100. Now, there are times where you could take on a fight, knowing that in short order, days, weeks, months, that the argument, the debate that you're involved in will be proven true. You will be vindicated. And what I sense in my appearance here, as we all think about how this would have gone or would not have gone, if things went in a different direction in November of 2024. Fortunately, because of the election of Donald Trump, which many of you worked very hard to make possible, you were given a great surprise decades earlier than expected. There might have been times where you were wondering whether or not that vindication was going to come any earlier than 2100. You were wondering whether or not that vindication was going to come any earlier than 2050. The Supreme Court did their part in cases like Loper Bright in West Virginia. President Trump did his part in not being deterred by assassins, bullets, or other attacks that came his way over the course of a first term or since. And none of you had ever been deterred at any point since that first moment that you decided to get involved in this effort. You didn't know when that time was going to come, how it was going to happen, whether or not any of us were going to be here when it did. But me being here, for us together to be able to celebrate the wins of the last 14 months, to look forward with great optimism, I would say, hope, excitement for what is almost 3 years still ahead of us, relief that so much of these decisions are getting done early in this term so that we have the responsibility of litigating our own decisions through the court system rather than repeating the mistakes of, oh, by the way, the Biden administration did by finalizing their decisions in 2023 and 2024 and allowing us to inherit their terrible decisions to have to defend in court, which we don't. And we're not operating under mental leaps. This group operates and must always, and EPA as well, must always operate under truth and transparency. Honesty is something that the American public values. The Obama administration, when deciding how to finalize the 2009 endangerment finding, wanted to be able to say that carbon dioxide is a pollutant. But they couldn't draw a straight line. And they never.
All right, so we're going to be jumping over into the press conference now. So one moment, please.
First conviction under the Take It Down Act, landmark legislation that First Lady Melania Trump played an instrumental role in getting passed that protects victims from non-consensual AI-generated sexually explicit images, cyber stalking, and threats of violence. This is a huge achievement for the First Lady, and I know the President is very proud of his wife's efforts in getting this critical legislation passed to protect America's youth. So we thank the First Lady for her efforts, and we hope that others will report on this historic conviction yesterday. With respect to the 2-week ceasefire announced by President Trump last night, this is a victory for the United States of America that the President and our incredible military made happen. From the very beginning of Operation Epic Fury, President Trump stated this would be a 4 to 6 week military operation to dismantle the military threat posed by the radical Islamic Iranian regime. Thanks to the unbelievable capabilities of America's war fighters, the United States has achieved and exceeded those core military objectives in just 38 days. The U.S. military destroyed Iran's defense industrial base, crushing the regime's ability to manufacture weapons that they and their proxies use to maim and kill Americans and terrorize the world. Iran's ability to build and stockpile ballistic missiles and long-range drones has also been set back by years compared to where it was 6 weeks ago prior to the launch of Operation Epic Fury. We destroyed the vast majority of Iran's ballistic missiles, launcher vehicles, and long-range attack drones through more than 450 strikes on ballistic missiles and approximately 800 strikes on Iran's drone launching units and storage facilities. In total, more than 13,000 targets across Iran were struck. Again, this is in the matter of just 38 days. Meanwhile, the Iranian Navy was completely annihilated. The United States destroyed more than 150 naval vessels in total, including 16 entire classes of Iranian warships. Despite once being the largest undersea force in the Middle East, Iran now has 0 submarine vessels. 97% of Iran's once massive inventory of more than 5,000 naval mines has also been targeted and destroyed. Iran's air forces are functionally and operationally irrelevant at this point, after the United States maintained total air dominance over their country for weeks on end. To underscore the significance of this, before Operation Epic Fury, the Iranian Air Force would fly between 30 to 100 flights per day. Today, that number is 0. Iran's ability to fund and support its terrorist proxies has been greatly reduced. At this point, Iran can no longer distribute weapons to its proxies in the region. And most importantly, Iran will not be able to acquire nuclear weapons. Prior to the start of this successful operation, Iran was aggressively expanding its short-range ballistic missile arsenal. Through these weapons and its navy, Iran was attempting to build a military buildup around their country that would pose an imminent and existential threat to the United States military assets in the Middle East, our allies in the region, and ultimately the free world. Iran was pursuing this dangerous and aggressive strategy for one reason: to hold the entire world hostage to its terrorist ambitions. The Iranians aim to use their expanded military capabilities as a shield around their country to continue achieving their ultimate goal internally, building nuclear bombs. But their murderous and evil plans have been blown up, quite literally and figuratively, along with their military, their nuclear program, and most of their senior leadership, including the former Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Their command and control structures were also massively disrupted after being struck more than 2,000 times. Many of their remaining leaders are paralyzed in fear and no longer enjoy the freedom to move around their country freely and meet openly. Thanks to the unmatched excellence of our warriors at the direction of the Commander-in-Chief, the world has just witnessed a historically swift and successful military triumph. President Trump started Operation Epic Fury with strategic military objectives, and the United States has clearly achieved them. As we mark this progress, we also remember and honor the 13 American heroes who laid down their lives in this noble effort. I know President Trump and our grateful nation honors their ultimate sacrifice, and we will never forget them. May God bless their families. The valiant efforts of all of our incredible service members created maximum leverage for the President of the United States, allowing he and his leadership team to engage in tough negotiations over the past couple of weeks that have now created an opening for a diplomatic solution and long-term peace in the Middle East. The President's maximum pressure and the leverage created by the success of Operation Epic Fury led to the Iranian regime asking for and ultimately agreeing to a ceasefire proposal with the United States. Iran could no longer tolerate being bombed or taking the gamble of what was to come following President Trump's 8 p.m. deadline last night. Iran has agreed to open the Strait of Hormuz, and as the President said, we have received a proposal from the Iranians that has been determined to be a workable basis on which to negotiate. I've seen a lot of inaccurate coverage today from the media about these negotiations and these plans already. So let me be clear and correct the record. The Iranians originally put forward a 10-point plan that was fundamentally unserious, unacceptable, and completely discarded. It was literally thrown in the garbage by President Trump and his negotiating team. Many outlets in this room have falsely reported on that plan as being acceptable to the United States, and that is false. With the President's deadline fast approaching and the United States military completely decimating Iran with each passing hour, the regime acknowledged reality to the negotiating team. They put forward a more reasonable and entirely different and condensed plan to the President and his team. President Trump and the team determined the new modified plan was a workable basis on which to negotiate and to align it with our own 15-point proposal. The President's red lines, namely the end of Iranian enrichment in Iran, have not changed. And the idea that President Trump would ever accept an Iranian wish list as a deal is completely absurd. The president will only make a deal that serves in the best interests of the United States of America, and he as a negotiating team will focus on this effort over the next 2 weeks, so long as the Strait of Hormuz remains open with no limitations or delays. These extraordinarily sensitive and complex negotiations will take place behind closed doors over the course of the next 2 weeks. I would strongly advise the media against running with narratives that have no basis in fact. What Iran says publicly or feeds to all of you in the press is much different than what they communicate to the United States, the president, and his team privately. Never underestimate President Trump's ability to successfully advance America's interests and broker peace. President Trump has a proven track record of achieving good deals on behalf of the United States and the American people, and he will only accept one that puts America first. With that, I will take your questions today. I'm sure you have a lot of them. In our new media seat, we have Shane Harris with the AMAC Newsline. Shane, thank you for being here. Why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Caroline. Two questions for you. First, following the president's announcement of the ceasefire, if this is indeed the end of hostilities in Iran, what is the president's message to the American people about what was achieved for our country through Operation Epic Fury?
Sure. I think I just laid out a significant portion of that in my opening remarks. 6 weeks ago, the president looked the American people in the eye directly, and he told them that he launched this operation to take out the imminent threat that was posed by Iran. And that threat has now been greatly destroyed. Their navy, their missiles, their defense industrial base, and their desire and their plan to build a nuclear bomb inside their country is no longer going to be allowed, can no longer happen, thanks to the remarkable success of Operation Epic Fury over the course of the last 38 days. That has been absolutely achieved, and now we're moving into the next phase of this, which is a negotiating period to put some fine points on this and to hopefully broker an agreement that can achieve long-term peace in the Middle East.
Yeah, and then second, what is the president's message to American seniors who have a much higher voter participation rate and they're likely to be a key swing vote in the midterm elections?
Well, the president loves our seniors across the country. And as you know, the president signed the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Working Families Tax Cut last year, which greatly reduced taxes on Social Security for our seniors. In fact, thanks to the Working Families Tax Cut, nearly 90% of seniors will no longer pay tax on their Social Security. That's a huge win for our seniors and also for our middle class and working families across the country with the no tax on tips provision and the no tax on overtime. Next week is tax week. You'll hear a lot from the president about how his policies have benefited the American people, and I'm proud to report that the president will be traveling next week to the great states of Nevada and Arizona to tout this historic accomplishment over the course of the next week. Thank you for being here, Shane. Gabe.
Thank you, Caroline. Iranian state media is saying that Iran has now closed off the Strait of Hormuz today in response to Israeli attacks on Lebanon. What's the White House response to that? And you just listed many military successes. I understand that. But strategically, how is the administration arguing that Iran does not have more economic leverage than it did before the start of the war?
Sure. Well, with respect to the first reporting out of Iranian state media, the president was made aware of those reports before I came to the podium. That is completely unacceptable. And again, this is a case of what they're saying publicly is different privately. We have seen an uptick of traffic in the Strait today, and I will reiterate the president's expectation and demand that the Strait of Hormuz is reopened immediately, quickly and safely. That is his expectation. It has been relayed to him privately that is what's taking place, and these reports publicly are false.
Caroline, the president yesterday threatened that a whole civilization would die if a ceasefire deal wasn't reached, understanding that Iranian leaders have previously said death to America. But why is it appropriate for the president of the United States to use that kind of language when talking about civilian targets? And was the president mocking Islam by signing off his True Social post over the weekend, praise be to Allah? Wouldn't that antagonize Muslim allies across the world?
Well, I understand the questions about the president's rhetoric, but what the president cares most about is results. And in fact, his very tough rhetoric and his tough negotiating style is what has led to the result that you are all witnessing today. Iran publicly acknowledging last night that they have agreed or that they wanted this ceasefire with the United States because they no longer could tolerate being bombed by our very powerful and lethal military, and that they have committed to the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, which the president will hold them accountable for, and it's something the administration is closely monitoring in real time. Danny.
Should the world not take his word seriously?
The world should take his word very seriously. seriously and understanding that the president is always most interested in results. And it was the Iranians who backed down, not President Trump. He said that they would face very grave consequences, as you just laid out, by the 8 p.m. deadline if they did not agree to reopening the Strait of Hormuz. And what did they do last night? They agreed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Danny.
Thanks, Caroline. Would President Trump like to see Lebanon included in this peace deal? Because as you know, there have been increased Israeli strikes on Lebanon today with dozens of casualties there.
Sure. Lebanon is not part of the ceasefire. That has been relayed to all parties involved in the ceasefire. As you know, Prime Minister Netanyahu put out a statement last night in support of the ceasefire, in support of the United States' efforts, and he's also assured the president they'll continue to be a helpful partner throughout the course of the next 2 weeks.
Is there any thought, though, that the president might like to see Lebanon included at a future date, given that it seems to be undermining the Iran ceasefire?
Again, this will continue to be discussed, I am sure, between the President and Prime Minister Netanyahu, the United States and Israel, and all of the parties involved. But at this point in time, they're not included in the ceasefire deal. Jeff.
Thank you. Caroline, will the U.S. take part in talks with Iran in Islamabad on Friday?
I can announce that the president is dispatching his negotiating team, led by the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, Special Envoy Witkoff, and Mr. Kushner to Islamabad for talks this weekend. The first round of those talks will take place on Saturday morning local time, and we look forward to those in-person meetings.
What role does the president see for the U.S. in monitoring or helping with the Strait of Hormuz going forward?
I think the president commented on that this morning. We're going to continue to monitor it very, very closely. We will be helpful in any way that we can, but we fully expect Iran to do this, and the president has made that quite clear as well. It's, again, as his statement said last night, this ceasefire is subject to the safe reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Again, this was just determined last night. We understand things take time, but that's the president's expectation, and he will hold everyone to it. Sure, in the green blazer.
Thank you, Caroline.
Sure. And then in front of you. But Andrew, you can go ahead.
All right.
You're not wearing a green blazer. You can...
I am actually wearing a green blazer.
It's a little brown to me, but go ahead.
Fair enough. Regarding the president's rhetoric, when the U.S. invaded Iraq in 2003, George W. Bush said in a message to the Iraqi people that the military campaign was directed, quote, against the lawless men who rule your country and not against you. Yesterday, the president threatened to destroy Iran's civilization, the entire civilization. Not the Iranian government, but the Iranian civilization, the Iranian people. The U.S. has been a moral leader for most of its history by fighting wars against other governments, not against civilizations. How can the president claim that America can ever have the moral high ground if he's threatening to destroy civilizations and not casting wars as fights against other governments?
Andrew, I think you should take a look at the actions of this president over the course of the past 6 weeks and the actions of our brave men and women in our United States military who have taken out essentially taken out the military of a rogue Islamic regime that has chanted death to America for 47 years, that has killed and maimed thousands of American soldiers over the course of the last 5 decades. The president absolutely has the moral high ground over the Iranian terrorist regime, and for you to even suggest otherwise is frankly insulting.
With all due respect, Caroline,
Go ahead.
with all due respect,
Go ahead.
there is...
Just given what we've seen in Lebanon today and the increased attacks from Israel, I mean, is there any concern that Netanyahu is trying to kill the ceasefire?
The president spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu last night, and in that private conversation, Prime Minister Netanyahu relayed exactly what he said to the world publicly, that he supports the president, and Israel remains a key ally and partner to the United States. They've been a tremendous partner over the course of the past 6 weeks, and we thank them for their heroic efforts as well. The president had that conversation last night, and that was relayed to the world publicly as well. Reagan, go ahead.
Caroline, I have a question for you on Iran, and then I have a question on the Dignity Act as
Sure.
well. On Iran, it's been reported that the ceasefire was struck after the involvement of 2 unlikely factors, J.D. Vance and China. What role did those parties play in striking a deal?
Well, Vice President Vance has played a very significant and a key role in this since the very beginning. Of course, he's the president's right-hand man. He is the Vice President of the United States. He's been involved in all of these discussions, and as I just announced, he'll be leading this new phase of negotiations in Islamabad later this week. With respect to China, there were conversations that took place between top levels of our government and China's government. The president has great respect for President Xi and a great working relationship with him and with that country, and he looks forward to visiting China in just a few weeks.
On the Dignity Act, it's getting a fresh push through Congress. It would give some illegal immigrants in the country a path to citizenship. What's the White House's position on this legislation, and would the president sign it if it made it to his desk?
Honestly, Reagan, I haven't spoken to the president about the legislation, but I will have that conversation, and we'll get you our formal position on it as soon as we can. You're welcome. Go ahead.
The president suggested in an interview this morning that he would support a showing of U.S.-Iranian venture to charge tolls for ships going through the strait. Does the president believe that the U.S. should earn revenue from the Strait of Hormuz going forward?
It's an idea the president has floated, as you know, and it's something that will continue to be discussed over the course of the next 2 weeks, but the incident is the reopening the strait without any limitations, whether in the form of tolls or otherwise.
On the highly enriched uranium, has Iran given the administration any indication that it would simply turn over the enriched uranium, or is this an expectation that the president has that he would have to send in ground troops in order to do that?
This is on the top of the priority list for the president and his negotiating team as they head into this next round of discussions. And as I said in my opener, that is a red line that the president is not going to back away from, and he's committed to ensuring that takes place. We hope it will be through diplomacy.
Have they given any indication that they would turn it over?
They have.
They have?
Yes. Trevor.
The latest news out of Iran is that the air defenses have been activated in several cities, including Isfahan, and that explosions have been heard in Isfahan. Who is bombing Iran right now?
Were those reports just as of a few minutes ago?
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously I'll have to go back and check with the national security team. I'm standing out here with all of you, but I will do that and we will get you an answer, okay?
And just on the civilization question that we've been talking about.
And I would just add to that point, again, I haven't seen these reports. I'm not verifying them. Not that I don't trust you, Trevor, but I want to go back and check with the experts here at the White House. I would just say, and I would echo what the Vice President said this morning, this is a fragile truce. Ceasefires are fragile by nature. We've seen this with respect to the 12-day war with Iran and Israel last year. It takes time sometimes for these ceasefires to be fully effectuated. And one of the results of Operation Epic Fury was we completely dismantled Iran's command and control center, which makes it difficult for them to pass messages up and down the chain. And so we understand that. I would caution a little bit of patience, but of course we want to see the ceasefire effectuated and abided by all parties as quickly as possible.
Thank you. And the American presidential administrations, going back to Ronald Reagan, have said this formulation about nuclear war, that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. Is that still the view of this administration, given the president's comments about civilization?
I have no change in our view on that policy. Katie.
Thanks, Caroline. I'm just, given the gravity of what he said yesterday, what was your understanding of what he meant when he said, this civilization is going to be eliminated?
I think it was a very, very strong threat from the President of the United States that led the Iranian regime to cave to their knees and ask for a ceasefire and agree to reopening the Strait of Hormuz. So it was a very strong threat that led to results. And as the Secretary of War stated at the Pentagon this morning, it was not an empty threat by any means. The Pentagon had a target list that they were ready to hit go on at 8 p.m. last night if the Iranian regime had not agreed to open the strait, which they did, and I think that's something we should all be grateful for.
The United States is a moral leader in the world, given that
I was asked this exact same question by your colleague Andrew in the back, and I think, again, the insinuation by anyone in this room that Iran somehow has the moral high ground over the United States of America is insulting, considering the atrocities that they have committed against our people and our military over the past 5 decades. John, go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. 2 questions for you. One has to do with a statement, a joint statement put out this morning by some of America's European allies, our NATO allies. And in that joint statement, they said regarding the Strait of Hormuz, our governments will contribute to ensuring freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. What's the administration's reaction to that joint statement? Does that smooth things over when the president meets with NATO Secretary General a little bit later this afternoon?
I have a direct quote from the President of the United States on NATO, and I will share it with all of you. They were tested and they failed. And I would add, it's quite sad that NATO turned their backs on the American people over the course of the last 6 weeks when it's the American people who have been funding their defense. As you know, President Trump will be meeting with Secretary Ruta in a couple of hours here at the White House, and I know he looks forward to having a very frank and candid conversation with him.
And then secondly, in regards to this conflict, 38 days, as you pointed out, President Trump has said that there's been regime change. Has that regime change led to more freedoms for the Iranian people?
I think that's a question that's being asked a little bit too early, John, and we hope that is the case, but it's something that has yet to be seen. Eamon.
Caroline, on this question of tolling by the Iranians in the Strait of Hormuz, I've heard you talk about a number of red lines that the president has in this negotiation, but I haven't heard you say that Iranian tolling in the Strait of Hormuz is a red line. Would it be acceptable to the United States at the end of all this if the Iranians are able to charge tolls in the Strait of Hormuz?
I think the president was very clear and simplistic in his language last night in his Truth Social post, where he said that this ceasefire is subject to the free, safe, and immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. That's very plain language, and it should be taken at face value.
You mean free
Carrie,
to charge?
Carrie, go ahead. Without limitation, including tolls, yes. Carrie.
A quick follow-up on the tolling. Why would the U.S. allow Iran to collect tolls in the Strait of Hormuz? That's not something that we've opposed for a number of years now.
Again, that's not something we've said that we've definitively accepted. The joint venture is something that was proposed by the president, but he was very clear in his statement last night. He wants to see the strait reopened immediately without limitation, and that's something we're going to hold them to. Yes, in the blue.
And second question on
family and friends in Iran. I myself am Iranian, and I've been talking to them through the blackout. One of my family members yesterday said goodbye to me. So what message should we be sending Iranians when they message me saying what should they be doing right now? How should they stay safe? Because they really don't know what to do.
I think the president's main priority, and my main priority as his spokeswoman, is to make sure that clear messages are sent to the American people, of course, which is my job today. With respect to the Iranian people, the president, has taken out the imminent threat that was posed by their military to the United States, to our allies in the region, to our forces in the region, and of course, as the president has long said, he hopes that Iran will be a country of peace, of prosperity, and we're moving into this next round of negotiations to hopefully come to an agreement with this new regime that will create long-term stability in the Middle East.
He has said that they should stay inside of their homes and also take back their country. So there's a contradiction there. So how do you address that?
Again, we're moving into this next round of negotiations with the remnants of the regime and those that we are speaking with now to hopefully reach a place of peace long-term for the region, and that includes the Iranian people as well. In the blue, go ahead.
Thank you, John. The White House posted the statement from the Iranian government that passage in the strait will be coordinated with Iran's armed forces. As of today, who controls the Strait of Hormuz?
Again, these statements were put out 12 hours ago. We expect that the strait will be opened immediately. As I've said earlier, we have seen an uptick in traffic in the strait, and it's something that we are monitoring minute by minute, hour by hour as the days go on.
Who controls the strait right now?
One on the deportations of Iranian officials, and then on the negotiations. Are there still security concerns about Vice President Vance being part of these peace talks, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner? And then two, given the ongoing deportation of General Soleimani's niece, does the Trump administration plan to deport more relatives or people in the families of Iranian officials that are in the U.S.?
Certainly, anyone who is here fraudulently. I understand one of the individuals who their visa was revoked by Secretary Rubio and they were deported by ICE. They had a fraudulent asylum claim. That's against the laws of the United States. So anyone who is here illegally or fraudulently is subject to our nation's immigration laws and will be removed from our country. And I know this continues to be a top priority for the State Department, working in conjunction with the Department of Homeland Security. With respect to the safety of the Vice President, we fully trust the United States Secret Service to do their job, to keep the Vice President and the President's negotiating team safe. They do a tremendous job, and we fully trust them to do that. In the back, go ahead.
The president has said Cuba is next. What's the message to the American people regarding Cuba, and what can Cubans expect in relation to this statement?
Well, look, I think when President Trump said that, and he later clarified after making that statement, that he meant the Cuban regime is bound to fall. Their country is very weak. They're in a very weak position economically, obviously, financially. The Cuban people are fed up with their government, as they should be. And these talks and discussions continue to happen at the highest level of our government. I don't have any updates or announcements for you with respect to Cuba policy today. Good to see you.
Thank you, Caroline. Secretary Hegseth said this morning that U.S. troops would be sticking around. Can you expound upon that, what we should expect from U.S. troops in theater for the next 2 weeks and beyond?
I would defer you to the Pentagon for any specifics on assets that have been in place in the Middle East, but take the Secretary at his word, and also the President has reiterated this as well in his own words, that we're not going to move anything immediately. Again, this is a 2-week ceasefire where we hope at the end, and we expect at the end, we'll have a good agreement between the United States and Iran, but in the meantime, we're going to ensure that our military is always at the ready of the Commander-in-Chief. I'll take a couple more in the back. Sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
On NATO, I'll take your question. Go
Thank you,
ahead.
Caroline. On NATO, can you tell me, is the United States still considering withdrawing from NATO? Is that still a possibility?
It's something the President has discussed, and I think it's something the President will be discussing in a couple of hours with Secretary General Ruta, and perhaps you'll hear directly from the President following that meeting later this afternoon. Thank you, everyone.
All right, so there you have the press conference in its entirety. I've got a couple of things. We may go into a few minutes of overtime just to clear the decks, since I don't have a political show until much later tonight. But I do want to talk about this real quick, because it's back to the whole Spamberger thing. So we talked about her lack of positive polling numbers in the 90 days that she's been in office, and it gets worse from there. So she's taking a victory lap for work that Youngkin put in on his way out the door. So this is from our friends over at Red State. This is put out by Sister Told Ya. So I'm going to read a little bit of the article, not all of it. So as we previously reported, fresh polling out of Virginia shows that an increasing number of voters in the Commonwealth have become dissatisfied with Governor Abigail Spanberger, as I call her Spamberger because she was fake from the beginning, after her first 90 days in office. The Washington Post Shar School poll found Spamberger's approval rating amongst voters sits at just 47%, with 46% disapproving of her performance thus far. According to Red State's Terry Christoph, what was especially noteworthy about the poll was how the numbers compared to similar polling the Washington Post had done on previous Virginia governors. The approval mark for Spamberger is 13 percentage points lower than the average for Virginia governors in the Post polling since the 1990s. They shared her near even split between approval and disapproval is the worst net approval rating than the early term score of her predecessors in previous polls. Unfortunately for Spamberger and her fellow Democrats, this week has gone from bad to worse, and as is the case with her dismal approval ratings, she only has herself to blame. So on Tuesday, she put out the following announcement. In case you missed it, aerospace company Avio is building a new $500 million manufacturing facility in Pennsylvania, the second largest business investment in Southern Virginian history. Today, I signed legislation to help close the deal and bring more jobs to the Commonwealth. And this is another post from her. Today, I signed bipartisan bills to bring 3,250 jobs and $7.1 billion in investment to Virginia. Attracting new companies and jobs to communities across our Commonwealth is a core focus of my administration. There's no better place in the nation to grow or start a business. The only problem with that is that she signed the thank you card. This was all work that was put in by her predecessor. So, and this is from Nick Minock. Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger sent media a press release titled Governor Spanberger signs bills into law welcoming 3,250 new jobs and $7.1 billion in business investments to Virginia. Each company listed in the press release announced their investment in Virginia when Glenn Youngkin was the governor. So, yeah. So, basically, just to put this into perspective, he did all the work, she signed in the thank you cards, and taking a victory lap off of his work. Sounds rather democratic, does it not? Just saying. All right, so I definitely wanted to talk about that because I think the shine is wearing off for the Democrats who thought they were getting all these great new things both in New York City and Virginia. So here's the other thing that's been happening in the news that almost nobody's talking about. So remember that whole post-Maduro Venezuela thing we were talking about? Apparently, there's some moving and shaking going on. So Venezuela actually has the world's largest oil reserves. Under Venezuela's former president, Nicolas Maduro, oil experts, I almost said Earl. My inner Okie really just about came out there. Oil exports had dropped significantly due to a lack of investment. Then came U.S. sanctions against any imports from the Latin American country. But U.S. President Donald Trump vowed to tap those reserves after the U.S. military captured Maduro in a surprise nighttime raid in January, when we snatched the dude in a Snuggie out of his own bed and made it look like it was a walk in the park. Now the oil is flowing again in Venezuela. In March, the country's monthly crude exports surpassed 1 million barrels per day. That's the first time the numbers have been that high since September. So there's plenty of untapped oil in the energy-rich South American country, and U.S. companies are chomping at the bit to get to take advantage of that. So international oil majors Chevron and Shell are closing in on the first big oil production deals with Venezuela since the U.S. capture of President Nicolas Maduro in January, according to 5 sources close to the negotiations, who have reported that to Reuters. The deals would allow both companies to boost production in coveted oil regions in the South American country, the biggest steps to date toward what U.S. President Donald Trump has said would be a $100 billion effort to rebuild Venezuela's oil industry after decades of mismanagement and underinvestment under Maduro and his predecessor, Hugo Chavez. So, more oil hitting the region, which will continue to bring oil prices down. Russia has been enjoying this $113 a barrel oil. Trust me. And now that the price is coming back down again, they're about to start hurting. As we start wrapping things up, look, I don't know what's going to happen with the ceasefire, but I do know this. If and when they break it, and technically they kind of already had, because I guess they got pissed off that Israel was still going after Hezbollah, even though our deal for peace was between us and them, not Israel. There's some saber rattling going on. Apparently, there's already been some reports that they may or may not have closed the straits. I guess we'll keep up with that and maybe give you an update later tonight. But I will say this. Again, Operation Epic Fury is officially in the books. It's closed. It's done. The assets are still in the region. Most of them have not started spinning up to leave yet. As a matter of fact, more are still headed that way. But what this does do is give Trump, again, a fresh set of downs if the Iranian regime tries to play the FAFO game again. And they may. Who knows? But this is another situation where Trump cannot win for losing. Because if he had done what he said he was going to do, he would be being crucified in the media today. Since he tried to find a peaceful resolution, he's now being crucified in the media today. Again, dude can't win for losing. And for those of you who think he's going to leave this crazy regime in place, the regime doesn't even exist anymore. That's actually what we're trying to find out, is who is going to step up in their place, which is why he put out the Truth Social post that he did this morning, indicating that as far as our information and indications go, it looks like there's already been a bit of a regime change there, and we're trying to find out who's going to emerge in charge. So as I said to the chat earlier, when I didn't want to talk over the briefing that we were playing, now it is time to see who puts the leash on whom. Will the IRGC come out on top and rein in the politicians? Will the politicians come out on top and rein in the IRGC? And will anyone start moving towards democracy? But while we're talking about all of this and everybody's finger pointing, I guarantee you our spooks are still doing their thing in Iran. Bookmark it, because I'm telling you, we're not leaving this stuff where it sits. I promise. All right. We're going to get out of here, ladies and gentlemen. Again, it has been my pleasure to sit with you today as we discuss all the news that is fit to print and some that isn't. My name is Rick Robinson. This is my show. Again, I do this thing usually every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at noon Eastern. Also do Kingdom and Country on Sunday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. America Off the Rails, Monday night, 10 p.m. Eastern. Men Explained Poorly, Tuesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern. Usually hanging out for Kingdom and Country, the Bible study edition, every other Wednesday night, which is actually tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern. Also tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, we have Toxic Masculinity. 9 p.m. Eastern, Behind the Enemy Lines Radio, which I may or may not be doing a guest appearance on. 10 o'clock tonight, Eastern Time, Rick and Orty with myself and the Amish. Then we'll close things out with Behind the Edge of Liberty Radio over with our SHR Media friends. Also want to give a quick shout out to both BZ from BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, which is now carried live by us on select Tuesdays, Thursdays, and occasionally Sunday nights. Usually at 10 p.m. 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. my time. I think. Yeah, it is. Okay, sorry. Conversions. There's no math on Wednesdays, damn it. And then, Jen and Rick, Thursday nights. He Said, She Said, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Juxtaposition every other Saturday night, 10 p.m. Eastern. Also, I write for Twitchy.com, MisfitsPolitics.com, LoftusParty.com, and I produce the Loftus Party podcast, which drops on Tuesdays. Hi, my name's Rick. I'm a workaholic. My last meeting was forever ago. I only have like 5 hours till I have to come back and start again, so I'm gonna go find some lunch. Bye, everybody. Say goodnight, Gracie.